Travis says it looks like Mordor out here. Daylight saving time. Thank God, we've saved daylight again.
We did. Hey.
Yes.
Cheers.
Episode 107 of Boulder with Travis Robinson.
Oh yeah. Cup that somebody else.
Fresh cups.
And,
Thank you.
and our special guest, Rosie Lidard with the Nevada Preservation Foundation, Inc. or org.
Not org, not
org.
org.
Yeah, org. It's a nonprofit, right? It's a 5013C.
C3.
C3. Yeah, C3.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, one of those.
It works.
One of those. You take grants.
That's right.
Cool. So we're gonna kind of start. Yeah, we're just doing just set the counter and welcome to. Oh yeah, all our fans and BC Social out there. Thanks to you guys out there. Seen this afternoon. You won't be live, but you can still comment live, and we'll still hear about it. So right? Yeah. Okay. So now it's gonna be Tales of the Counter. So Rosie, what's your story? Tell us your story. What is your story?
Oh my goodness!
What's the story?
Well, firstly, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This is great.
Thank you for showing up.
This is my second annual visit, I believe.
That's right. And you saved daylight once again.
I saved daylight. Yes. We should make it a tradition.
Yeah.
I'm just so happy to be here in Boulder City. So the abbreviated story of my story is that I've been working in historic preservation and heritage tourism for about 20 years now from the Gettysburg area. Last worked in Philadelphia, and then where you're talking about revolutionary history.
Right. And now we're talking different there back east than here. I mean, like here, we got 60 years and everything, happened, 80 years, and it's just everything happened there. But like in Philadelphia, that's people have underwear that's older than that, right?
Well, they might have so they might not admit to it, but absolutely.
It's hundreds of years. Yes.
I think, and that's exactly what brings us. Wow, that brings us right away to contemporary, discussions here in Boulder City. Yeah. Whereas the East Coast has a long history to look into. Certainly not as long as in Europe. Has much longer traditions, right? Here in the West Coast, there's new cities and more recent past is what we're interested in preserving here.
Right. Well, and it's really not so much about the quantity or it's about the quality of the story, right? It's
absolutely.
It's about the story. If it could be a short story. But if it's an important story, it's history stories, right?
Absolutely. If you wouldn't mind, I will quote that over and over again. It's about the quality of the story, not how old it is, not just the origination, and not just the oldest and the first stories, but also, how the stories shape the built environment around us, right? How can we find meaning and sense of place no matter when that past was?
Probably the first guy that lived in Boulder City probably got kicked out of here. They just came over, hey, you got to get out of here. And some guy was living here you just talk. We don't even know about that. Yeah, because, that's not important. Right? Yeah.
Well, and we'll leave that for another episode.
Okay. So what are you doing for us then? Okay, so you were here this last week, right?
Oh, yeah.
That was exciting. How was our workshop?
Absolutely. So the workshop is really about, this was our first opportunity of several to come out and to discuss historic preservation, heritage tourism.
And you're working on, you're working on the city's historic preservation plan is what you guys are working on, right?
Correct. And so we have this really great opportunity to listen to folks, right? We had a workshop and we divided it into 4 subjects. So one subject was, what do we think preservation is? Preservation is kind of trending as a field, right? How are we? Whereas we used to freeze something in time and call that historic preservation. Now we're saying that buildings must live; they must be active in order for that. Right? Okay. So you can't just put a freeze in it and say there's only one historic period ever, because you're building that history. Like, for example, in Philadelphia, if everything had stopped at the time that the founding fathers were there, we wouldn't have had much of a city, right, moving forward. So you're marking
in your TV,
right. You're marking new chapters. So that was one area we touched on in the workshop. But other things were like, what do you do as a member on the HPC, helping people to understand that?
People kind of agree because there were like 4 groups that kind of filtered around. So in a consensus, did we all agree in Boulder City what preservation was? Did we kind of consensus, or is it all over the place?
Well, and shouldn't it be a little bit all over the place?
I hope it would be, as far as people and what direction they want to take it.
Well, if everybody says everybody was from the same place in Boulder City, I said, you're lying. You're wrong.
Right.
Can't be. What Boulder City? That must be Boulder, Colorado. Everybody agrees.
Exactly.
It was really unique. One of the things, at my particular table, I got to discuss more of the grassroots efforts and the community support that's needed to establish new designation or historic designated neighborhoods, right? And just interesting is in greater, in Clark County, we would require 51% support. But one of the interesting conversations, and this is why we're listening to you, right, is, well, Boulder City is so small. Can you give us a sampling of smaller cities, who have done or the same path? Right. And I thought, you know what, that is an excellent question. We will go back. We'll find those answers, right? Yeah. And so it's when in a workshop like that, we're not coming in to descend with all of the answers. We're coming in to understand what are your most challenging, perplexing questions as representatives of Boulder City.
Do you think it was diverse? I mean, I think some people, I think when you guys broke it down, that was very important because it's not the loudest voice in the room. It's not the only person gets heard. Although it was really hard to hear in that room.
It really was.
But anyway, that's another issue.
That's a whole other deal.
Michael Mays has heard us, so he knows. He knew that we wanted a little bit better acoustics.
Right.
So where were the tribes leaning? What were they going towards? What was the different fractions of the groups?
Well, unanimously was this idea of the core, really caring about the core, which is already Boulder City has your one large historic district, right? But even Alan has told me there's even parts within that, right? Which I think is really cool. But I think we heard a lot of support for sentiment of like, okay, well, a lot of this is voluntary now, right? A lot of the ordinance and compliance with the ordinance is voluntary. And I think that people were hungry to understand, if not to say, let's have more enforcement, let's ask questions about do we need greater enforcement, right? Another thing that was particularly interesting was the discussion about, it's about style, right?
Style, right.
So, in Las Vegas...
Who is going to be the arbiter of taste?
Exactly.
This is an important question.
It's a very important question.
Certain ugly things are beautiful, I found out. You learned that in historical preservation words.
Right. So I think that there is a lot of... when we're asking questions about... did somebody say something about
what is the audience saying?
Style?
We listen to the audience.
Somebody's saying hi to Dave. Just really while he eats breakfast.
Hi, Dave. Dave's back.
Come in.
So I think that's one of
the other Dave is gone. Dave, where is it? Oh, Dave Nelson. He's got it. He left. He's gone.
Dave was at our workshop.
The other Dave.
At our workshop.
No, Dave and Dave. Yeah. Dave.
So I think. I thought it was
either
really
that or he's
interesting.
stalking you.
No, certainly not. I think about the style conversation was this idea of like, okay, if you're rebuilding a plan, you're looking at your city plan. Today is 2020, but you want that plan to have a little bit of longevity so that you're, it's nimble and can move for the, for the concerns of the near future, right? And so that means that things that Boulder City previously didn't deem historic could be historic.
That's right. And new is old and old is new.
And exactly. And that's what was becoming a very lively, hot topic.
Yeah. Well, that's what happened. I woke up one day and looked in the mirror and go, my God, I'm old.
New is old, is new.
Well, Travis, you're still a little bit behind, but you know,
He's still in his immortality phase.
for myself,
I've passed my immortality phase.
I don't know. I've lost my hair.
Yeah, well, that's mortality stuff. That's definitely mortality stuff.
No, that was my mortality. I was like,
Right.
Well, that's more in line with the style conversation.
Yeah, but will you free
style.
climb?
Yeah,
The
with
style
Will you
conversation.
free climb without a belay?
No.
Okay.
Once upon a time, I did.
Yeah.
But well, that brings up, so that's kind of funny because people do think of that in terms of their own lifetime. And so
Right.
by state standards, the state can consider something historically significant at 40 years, which at
Wow.
me, 38, I'm almost historically
Well, you're almost
significant.
historic. No one can decide if you're worth preserving.
Almost historically.
Hopefully,
I think she's worth preserving. Whoa,
hopefully I'll
both.
be worth
Preserve.
We'll need 51% support and no less than 20% dissent.
Oh, yeah.
So far, you got 33% of 3. No, sorry, 66.
So that people think that the majority could, 51% should be the threshold, or it should be more than that.
So that would be
For
kind
accept-
of, well, I still haven't tabulated the votes. So I
All the
think
dots.
you
We had
did
dots.
have you had
Controversial.
you had
dots were back in Boulder City.
controversial dots.
Yeah.
So all in all, about few attendance of about 40. And most of it appeared, but again, like I said, I don't want to Florida situation with the recount, but it appeared just from looking at it, projection
Right.
speaking, that most people were staying in line with those kind of averages. So 51%, getting 51% support, and that's for the, again,
Yeah, I thought I could have saw that. Although with the floating dots.
So what are these dots?
floating
Just
dots.
problem areas? People that are
So
questioning?
what we had asked it in the particular workshop, so we held a workshop, we had 4 different stations, and my station was really about, in the rewriting of the ordinance, how much support within a proposed historic district should there be among those residents and living in that immediately proposed historic district. So
The dots.
51% seems to be agreeable, as is, a standard. So.
What were people saying as far as the flip side? Were people generally behind it, or were people like, this doesn't need to be here? Where other people, or one of the tribes was like, oh no.
Well, I think it was again all about asking smart questions, being unified to ask smart questions at this point, I would say, and and I think it was somewhat of to get into stylistic conversations, and is there, as we're moving more into fast-paced manufactured type of housing, right? And the controversial style choices of the 1970s came up a few times.
And the 1980s.
Will
Popcorn ceilings.
right?
I told everybody there, one day the Smith building will look beautiful too.
Exactly. So then that was like, what does that second chapter have to do with the first chapter? Will it
CP
compete
mortar,
with it?
who would have known? I had to be
Yeah.
like 60 before CP mortar became beautiful to me,
Gotta wait
It's a
for
long
it.
time.
Gotta wait for it.
I knew this contractor, and he was older, he was an older person. And he had said to me, he was like, oh, don't you, admire my house? And he was like, it had that messy mortar. And he's like, because I'm a contractor, I just could never respect that look. So I knocked it all off, and I, put it, and,
cost them a lot of money
and
to get rid of that.
it was, the conversation, it was something that kind of made me sad. It was a little bit bittersweet to me, but then I had never really thought about that him and his profession just didn't respect that style choice.
Well, Dave has a house, historic house, brick house on Denver Street, but it actually has, it looks like it's one brick house, but if you look carefully, there are 2 different kinds of mortars between the bricks. You can tell his addition because of the way the mortar is handled.
Interesting.
Same bricks. And
That's wild.
If you look at the old photographs from 1931, it's not there. Next to it, it's not there.
Right.
There you go.
Well, those houses
Now you can't even find the bricks.
well, the houses are quite small, so imagine
They're very small. Yeah.
having an extra room could make a big difference. Yeah.
You know, so historically, were people smaller back then, or did you just fit better? They were smaller, they fit better, or I don't know. You know, there's like we had less stuff.
Hey Cheryl, good morning.
There was no Costco. That was the big thing.
Yeah, no Costco.
You couldn't buy
In bulk.
5 cases of toilet paper to hide because of some, you know, whatever shortage.
Yes, they sell that.
Wrap it around your body, mummify.
The question is, I just went to the grocery store yesterday and
They're out of toilet paper.
They're out of toilet paper,
Like
but
the weirdest thing.
but-
Like,
well, what else are people needing to buy? Are they not buying other things? Just toilet paper?
yeah, like. I mean, what
They're
about,
buying
you
all
know,
the rice. They're buying all the everything. The Purell. The water. Yeah, the cases of water. Like
Yeah,
it's
we're
gonna
gonna
save their
want-
life.
yeah, they were gonna hang out. You know, I mean,
I got my panic popcorn from Costco the other day.
oh yeah.
Yeah, so
Oh,
I can sit back and watch the movie.
Well, you should really be buying this like Sterno or some kind. Remember Sterno? The alcohol. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
panic popcorns of hummus.
Panic popcorn.
Yeah, the toilet paper. You know, it's like.
Well, I mean,
Like
you got those
in
massive
the
bags
zo-
at
you know, the
Costco.
zombie
It's like
apocalypse,
$6
you're
for
gonna
a
go,
massive
oh
thing
my
of
God,
popcorn.
without my
I
garment.
know.
It's the best popcorn. It's got canola oil.
Yeah.
Like, it's really tasty.
Commodity.
I didn't-
Perfect amount of salt.
Well, she said maybe
know
people
that.
are blowing their nose with it. I don't know. You know.
It's possible. It's
Or just,
possible.
you know, maybe just wrap your head kind of disposable mask, the invisible man look.
The invisible man look.
You could be your own invisible character. You know, protective fashions that are cool.
They call this one the.
So tell me, okay, Rosie.
Oh, sure.
The other, tell me your favorite, because you know you're kind of a historian and news story. So what's your favorite Boulder City story you heard? You know, like what, the story that you came here and went like, well, that's an interesting story. That's a weird story, or that's, you know, kind of made you fall in love with the town, maybe, or not. I mean, just, yeah.
Well, there's a few things. First, I like the idea that Boulder City is not independent from Las Vegas, and Las Vegas is not.
Right. I don't know.
So I love that these
Yeah.
two need to be presented as a unit.
Our history is between here, Boulder Highway and Vegas. It's like the history of Southern Nevada. You know.
Yes,
That's-
yes.
Everything
true.
happened along that road. I mean, everything happened that stood. Yeah.
And I like
You know.
too when you think about Nevada as a whole, right? I like what Boulder City contributes and Las Vegas. These two together contribute to the overall picture of
Oh, yeah.
Nevada, right? I like if you're looking at Las Vegas, you're thinking about, well, those who know the story of Helen Stewart will know that maybe she had an opportunity to leave, right? And I like in Boulder City how maybe there was a pretty easy exit strategy for those people who built the dam and could have left, right? But did not. And so those two stories, even in the way of who decides to stay,
Right.
instead of, you know, today's, in Las Vegas, we talk a lot about it being, you know, a transient, you know, community. But I think when you find that there are people who have a lot of metal and they hunker down and they desire to make community.
Yeah.
So that is the favorite story, I think, that links
yeah.
and tied together with Boulder Highway really links those
Right.
together. Yeah.
You know, it's like communities will find the way, you know, like
Yes!
the dinosaur story, you know, like get people together and what we do, let's make schools. We need schools.
Right.
We need
Picnics.
a new park.
Let's go.
But, well, I think the other thing is when you told me about the Kentucky bluegrass, right?
Kentucky blueberry.
That,
Yeah.
That was so, this
Soil,
idea.
the topsoil.
Right.
Yeah.
The idea that the progress that was happening on the western front, right, you know, was not just something that belonged to Boulder City residents, but something of a little bit of a national rite
America,
of
right?
passage.
We wanted-
Right.
When they got Wilbur Weed goes, you know, when he first came here in 1931, he goes, hey, you know, we could save a lot of water if we did this thing called Zeroscape. What the hell? No, we don't want cactus. We know we are in the desert. Don't remind us we're in
Right.
the desert. We want to look like the rest of America. Like,
Yeah.
what does that mean? Oh, lawns.
Right.
Lush green.
Let's
Alabama.
go order 15,000 feet of, you know, pounds of grass seed. Anyway, it's one of our favorite parts of the day here.
Oh,
This
yeah.
is a special. Look at this. This is okay. This
Oh, yeah?
is
We got
okay. You
an
gotta show this
English
off.
muffin. We got sourdough toast. We
Wonderful.
have rye toast.
Oh, we have
Yeah.
all of the toast.
We have the world of
Toast.
The world
Yeah.
of toast.
And we have white toast.
white toast.
Toast. That was well said.
You're toast.
Crazy.
World of toast.
What is
Enjoy
the
your
what,
bread.
what is the most popular toast at the cup?
Probably
I
sourdough.
was gonna say
Sourdough over here, yeah.
Comes from Great
That's
Puns Bakery.
Great.
That little bit of
Well, the
fun.
marble rye. The
Sourdough.
marble rye is kind of cool. Yeah, yeah. Wait, let's vote. Which is your favorite coffee cup? You know,
What's your
toast.
favorite toast?
Can you everybody's kind of like vote on it? Thank you. And
What
we'll
is
let you
your
know
favorite
the.
toast.
Yeah.
Mine's sourdough.
Anybody want a toast? It's like, toast. Some guys,
Have a toast.
you know. What is that? Oh, the ATM. There's somebody stealing the ATM machine?
His
Uh-oh.
arms wrapped around it.
I know.
Some guy's rifling the ATM over there.
So we call 911? No, don't call. No one call 911. This is the joke. That's what you say.
You don't need that.
It's his ATM. He's breaking into it himself.
I think you should put some eyes on it.
Okay.
No, eyes like so it has a personality.
Makes
Yeah.
sourdough always be the most popular.
So now, will you be expected
Yeah, yeah.
this morning to eat all these toasts?
I don't
Okay.
think so. Maybe a bite of each.
A
Okay.
bite of each. Yeah, just think of.
I gotta butter my bread though.
Oh, yeah,
Butter
you
my
gotta
butter
bread with butter.
This is the sourdough. Yeah, we're just gonna cut it up. Yeah, let me just cut it.
You want some
no.
sourdough? Would you like some
Oh
sourdough?
no.
No, I think I might understand that sourdough is
Sourdough?
Yeah.
no. That it came about. It's this app that it came about as a Western tradition.
Right.
Because the bread became sour, so people
Right,
were.
because it started rotting basically. What are we gonna do with it? Well, let's just cook it anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe it'll look better if we like cook it. And they go, well, it does look a lot better.
Yeah, a little sour.
But it tastes
Looks good over
good. Give me some more whiskey.
It's got kind of like yeah, give me some more whiskey. This one kind of has like a swirl. It's interesting.
Back here again.
I mean, you got the whole grain, and then you just got the white.
No, oh, there's no whole grain. Oh, there's a
I feel
wheat
like
toast.
sourdough is much more superior to white. It's got the same taste, but with tang.
But in probiotics, I think they call it probiotics.
Yeah,
right?
that's
yeah.
the
So what
new
they are?
one.
It's a probiotic, so
Yeah.
it's got to be good for you. Maybe. If
Maybe.
it doesn't kill you, it'll cure you. It makes you
Yes,
stronger.
yes.
Oh, it's like a yogurt and culture. Like they're like, oh, you should eat this moldy wet stuff, and they're like, it'll help your stomach. And people are like,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
moldy
Did the
wet stuff. That
Westerners
sounds
invent
right.
yogurt too? No, the Greeks did, right? Like
Well, or sauerkraut is less
sauerkraut.
German,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. You know, all these, I wonder all the spoiled food products that didn't make it. You know, and those little lost tribes. Yeah, we're the sauerkraut tribe. We live here. You know, now the guys that were doing like the hay, the sour hay tribe,
Beer
Make
and
it.
wine,
Yeah,
right? Beer, wine, ferment all of our fermented foods. Okay, this is good. All right.
Sourdough first.
Well, bon appetit.
Oh yeah,
Yes,
There's nothing quite like toast.
Toast is good.
Toast to you.
Toast, I think, is good.
Sourdough.
No.
Oh, that's
It's actually
very
pretty
good.
good sourdough.
This is really good.
Only the finest quality bread at the coffee cup.
It's very good.
Maybe I have to have a white toaster. Look how thick these.
Yeah.
These like
Really
This
adds
isn't
to
like these are like
actually-
extra thick, right?
It's a delicacy. Okay, here we go. What is this one? I think this is the Pumpernickel.
This is a marble
No, that's
rye.
a rye.
Rye.
Yeah, marble rye.
The rye's got like a swirl in it.
This is the swirl taste differently in the swirl, or is it all kind of mono?
No, it's all kind of mono.
Yeah.
It's not as tasty as the sourdough though.
I mean, can you like just chew on and like licking the Oreos? You kind of like eat just the black part of the normal, or
No, that you
My
won't.
taste buds are thinking.
no? What do you think?
No, you have to, for an Oreo, you have to enjoy the whole thing.
You get the whole thing? Oh yeah, you don't lick them.
It's a little bit
No,
more
no,
seedy, kind of. I don't know. It doesn't have the funk. It's more seedy. I don't know. Pumpernickel. What is pumpernickel?
No, this is right. Yeah.
Oh right. Okay. So rice seed.
But I don't know what
That is a good
pumpernickel
question.
is.
What is a pumpernickel? I know there was the purple pumpernickel.
I have no idea.
What is
What
a
is
pumpernickel, right?
I don't know. I think it's a type of rye.
Is it a kind of rye? Pumpernickel rye?
I don't know what pumpernickel.
So where did the purple pumpernickel come from? I thought he was like a thief or like a a bandit or something. Right?
I think, here, Alan, you try this rye. I think the rye is more aromatic, whereas
Aromatic.
Yeah.
sourdough is more just tang.
Really conquering the hard questions of the universe right now.
Hard questions of
And it really
toast.
gets because when you start eating toast, you forget about like the speed of light and stuff like that. It just it becomes irrelevant. You know what I mean? Like, who cares?
Well, I think this is good because it brings you back to.
Sorry, George.
Oh, George studies the speed
George
of light.
Ray. He's our astrophysicist friend that lives on Park Street. It's always relevant,
It is always real.
Yeah, but no one eating toast.
There might be some intersection of that
Oh, yeah.
study
You have
against
good
toast.
toast in Philadelphia. I mean, every place is noted for its bread and things like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. And they're really picky.
They're really picky.
Oh, they're really picky about their bread, right?
Yeah, yes.
The further east you go, the more picky about their bread they get. I
Yes,
think.
absolutely.
Right.
Well, I
Whereas
think
on the coast, you can just eat Wonder Bread, and that's good for 90%.
there were two bread items that I found not satisfactory when I came here, and they were pretzels and bagels, which I really preferred back east.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, we have no standard for pretzels. We'll eat anything that's kind of dark with salt on it. And,
No, a pretzel is so similar to like the sourdough idea. It's like super yeasty kind of taste. You want it to have like a yeasty kind of like doughy, salty taste.
Yeah, that's why the good sourdough is so old. You got those 1,000-year-old mother starters that are.
So do you find now that you have found, this is the story of
growing
Vegas,
forever.
so is there a place where you have found the pretzels and bagels?
No, I kind of got a desire for that. I don't know. I just don't eat bagels here or pretzels
don't eat-
here so much. But no,
That's so sad.
I come to the coffee cup and I have sourdough.
Sourdough. I would say sourdough takes the cake.
Ooh,
Yes.
the toast with the most.
The toast with the most. Come down to the cup, get some flavor in your toast. Sourdough.
Excellent.
When they ask, now you know.
Ooh, very
Sourdough.
Well, this was an
sourdough.
interesting episode. We kind of learned, we kind of evolved from our second questions, unless, you want to ask your question still, real quick.
I mean,
But I think we did talk about her superpower already.
Yeah,
We know
no.
how she's,
I mean, we can still ask you. What is your superpower?
Superpower.
Why not?
20 seconds or less.
20 seconds or less.
Well, it's an okay level of superpower. It's maybe not a super. It's a power. I think
Yeah.
I enjoy toast.
No,
think
don't take it
we
for
all?
granted. I was in the ICU for like 2 months, So
Yeah.
things like
Alan's in the
toast,
future.
breathing, peeing,
Absolutely.
stuff like that.
I
It's
would
all
say
good.
it is those things.
Yeah.
Well, we were joking right before we started that Alan was trying to torture me with the 7 a.m. episode of Daylight Savings the day after Daylight Savings.
Yeah,
so
right. That is your superpower.
7 o'clock felt
Right.
like 6 a.m. Right, but I got to see the sunset. I think
Sunrise.
Oh yeah.
Sunset.
You get it confused when you don't see it.
But, yeah, exactly. But I think that's part. I wouldn't call this superpower, but it is something that I enjoy, is the ability to enjoy daily life things,
Yes.
like toast, and to really study them. And
right.
I think that
And
that
you're
comes
always
in some
irritable,
of
too.
the.
I texted you at 11 o'clock. Are really last night, and you're still cheerful. 6:45 a.m. We're gonna mic you up.
Well, it is.
Smiley face, everything, you know.
I enjoy. So I would say my ultimate superpower. My mom named me Rosie, and I love that name, and I feel like it makes it easy to be happy. So
Yeah, it was like. Well, with that we got it. Okay, thank you for episode 108 of Boulder.
So.
Yeah,
108.
and see you guys next week.
Bye. Thank
I think
you.
we have TJ next week. We have TJ next week. Oh my God.
Yay!
Cheers, Dave. The toast tasting, that was phenomenal.
That was great.
Toasting. Well, we're still
I've never
alive.
had a toast tasting.
Yeah.
Oh.
The toast tasting was good.
I've never had a toast tasting.
Hey, I thought it was kind of unique.
Am I allowed?
Another.
I mean, I got to see
Another-
the actual difference in between the toasts.
Are we allowed to
In real
do?
time.
What happens after this? Am I allowed to tell people that I'm still in need for volunteers for
Oh, yeah,
Human
yeah,
History?
yeah.
How do I do that?
What, on this show?
Yeah.
Oh,
You do it quickly
Look at-
before
no.
we end.
Are
you
we
can-
done?
you can add, or you can also
Or yeah, you can comment on it.
you can comment on it. Just comment on it.
Okay. Well, how do I do that?
You go on to the podcast. And you hit the comment button.
Okay.
Type it in. Instead of a smiley face, you say, "Hey, I need volunteers."
Right, right.
Rosie the Riveter. No.
Right.
I knew that whole. I just heard this mom interview with this woman that worked at the Rosie Riveter National